is CBN Newswatch.
Thanks for joining us for CBN Newswatch. I'm Wendy Griffith. Today, Israel's war against Hamas at a critical juncture. That's what a retired Israeli general tells CBN News as talks are still underway for a ceasefire. And the U.S. is airdropping aid to Gaza. Tomorrow is the big day for presidential election primaries, Super Tuesday. We'll take a look at the races and some bad poll numbers for President Biden. This surgeon called out his hospital for transgender surgeries on minors. Now he's facing a federal investigation. We'll hear from the whistleblower himself. And The Chosen has been a huge success, but you may be surprised to learn who's actually watching this series about the life and ministry of Jesus. Those stories and much more today on Newswatch.
This is CBN Newswatch.
And we begin in Israel, where the war is at a critical juncture, according to a retired Israeli general. His assessment, coming as a member of the war cabinet, makes an unexpected and controversial visit to Washington, D.C., and the U.S. is airdropping humanitarian aid to people in Gaza. CBN Middle East Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell brings us the story from Jerusalem.
Several nations, including Israel, are dropping aid to Gaza by air in an attempt to get help directly to the citizens of Gaza, who the UN reports are on the verge of starvation. The IDF says much of the aid going into Gaza by land is stolen by Hamas, and tells CBN News the humanitarian crisis serves the propaganda goals of Hamas leader Yahya Sinwar. Ceasefire talks resumed in Cairo, but Hamas refuses to provide information on the well-being of the hostages, a key demand by Israel. U.S. Vice President Kamala Harris says it's up to Hamas to agree to the ceasefire.
Let's get a ceasefire. Let's reunite the hostages with their families, and let's provide immediate relief to the people of Gaza.
Harris criticized Israel for not doing more to increase aid into Gaza, and said humanitarian aid convoys must not be targeted. The IDF denies it targeted Gazans and says it's reviewed last week's tragedy when more than 100 Gazans died in a rush to get aid.
Our initial review has confirmed that no strike was carried out by the IDF towards the aid convoy. The majority of Palestinians were killed or injured as a result of the stampede.
Retired General Amir Avivi tells CBN News the war is at a critical moment.
Because the Hamas retreated to Rafah, all the leadership is there, the hostages are there, and now this is the decisive moment where when the IDF will go into Rafah, this will be the defeat of Hamas.
In the meantime, War Cabinet member Benny Gantz traveled to Washington and is expected to meet with Vice President Harris. Prime Minister Netanyahu rebuked Gantz, saying there's only one prime minister, and told Israeli officials in D.C. not to meet or help Gantz. Some see the impromptu visit as an attempt to undermine Netanyahu and pressure him to make more concessions to the U.S. In hopeful news, students have begun to return to the southern community of Sderot, 5 months after the Hamas massacre on October 7th.
Look at the joy. If we were looking for a symbol of victory, so look around. This is the symbol of victory of Sderot. This is the symbol of victory of the people of Israel.
Chris Mitchell is with us now from Jerusalem. Chris, you just heard the Israeli foreign minister speak. What did he have to say?
Well, first of all, Wendy, I'll tell you, we're just outside the hotel's Citadel, David Citadel here in Jerusalem. There's a meeting of 21 Christian legislators, parliamentary members from around the world, and they were here on a 3-day conference, and that's where they heard Foreign Minister Israel Katz. He talked about 3 things, Wendy. First of all, he talked about the fact that they need to make sure that the war is completed, that the war cannot end before Hamas is eliminated as a threat on Israel's southern border. The second thing he talked about was Iran being the head of the snake and actually the fountainhead, as it were, of all the proxies that are around the region, funded and fueled by Iran. And the third thing he talked about was global anti-Semitism. And they're having an initiative right now to try to combat that anti-Semitism. He's been saying that it's really exponentially grown since October 7th.
And Chris, what can you tell us about the concerns that Benny Gantz's visit to the U.S. is an attempt to undermine Netanyahu and get him to make more concessions to the U.S.?
Well, as we were talking to someone earlier today, a lot of people think this is politics. Benny Gantz is probably the one leader right now that has more popularity than Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And it looks like some people see this as a political attempt to get more popularity here in Israel, and also possible undermine exactly how Netanyahu is in many ways opposing what the U.S. administration wants. They want a two-state solution. Netanyahu is against that, and they also are pressuring Israel to provide more humanitarian aid. Israel, on the other hand, is saying we're not stopping humanitarian aid. We're doing as much as we can to help those Gazans that have to flee the fighting. But internally, many people see Gantz's visit to Washington as an attempt to sort of undermine Netanyahu politically.
Yeah, I know he feels that way. You spoke with retired Israeli General Amir Avivi. He's warning against a permanent ceasefire. Why is he saying that?
He's saying that because he says a temporary ceasefire is not a really problem. Maybe 4 to 6 weeks, that's what they're talking about now in the hostage negotiations. However, he says a permanent ceasefire really, in a sense, is saying that Israel is going to lose the war. Right now, the critical junction, he says, that Israel is at is that they're on the precipice of going into Rafah. Rafah is the last stronghold of Hamas. Maybe 4 to 6 battalions of Hamas are right now in that city, right there on the Egyptian border. They're using many of the Gazans, over 1 million, as human shields. And Avivi is saying Israel needs to go into Rafah, needs to eliminate Hamas, needs to make sure it doesn't survive. And also, there's really critical things, smuggling tunnels likely on that Egyptian border that need to be stopped so Israel can have a safe haven there on their southern border.
And Chris, does Avivi believe Israel is making major gains against Hamas?
He does. He actually does. And I think a lot of people feel that sometimes the advances that Israel is making in northern Gaza and southern towns like Khan Yunis is being underreported and really not reported accurately. But he feels that they're making substantial progress. And really, if they do go into Gaza, Rafah, that is the last stronghold of Hamas in Gaza, he feels they're going to win the war. And then things will have to turn north to Hezbollah.
Yeah, speaking of the north, what's the latest on Israel's battles with Hezbollah along the border with Lebanon?
Well, I can tell you, Wendy, just in the last couple of hours, there was a terror attack by Hezbollah. At least one was killed, and a number of foreign workers on Israel's northern border. And, you know, everybody you talk to here, Wendy, you can talk to a taxi driver, you can talk to the people I talk at the dry cleaners, or you talk to experts. They're all saying that once the war with Hamas in the south is completed, that Israel has to look north. They can't allow Hezbollah, maybe 10 times as strong as Hamas, to exist there on the northern border. Tens of thousands of Israelis are out of their livelihoods. They're away from the northern border, and they're living in hotels, many of them here in Jerusalem. So they can't allow Hezbollah to continue. So the thought is not only will they go perhaps to Hezbollah after they finish with Hamas, but even they would go further to Iran and its nuclear programs.
Wow, incredible. Can't imagine what everyone's going through there. Chris, thank you so much for that report. Stay safe. God bless you.
Thanks, Wendy.
That is Chris Mitchell from Jerusalem. All right. Well, as you know, the threat of Iran and its proxies hovers over a tense Middle East. The Senate Foreign Relations Committee put the issue front and center. CBN Capitol Hill correspondent Matt Galka brings us that story from Washington.
Iran remains a destabilizing force in the Middle East as Israel continues to try and eradicate Hamas. Avoiding a larger conflict continues to be the goal from the United States, but figuring out exactly how to do that remains tricky.
From Syria to Yemen to Iraq to Lebanon, Iranian proxies are a serious, lethal threat to our allies globally, to our partners in the region, and the United States' national security interests.
The Iranian regime has influence over multiple terrorist groups across the Middle East. The Israeli defense minister warns they plan on using Ramadan to execute more terror attacks around Israel, using Hamas and Hezbollah to carry out attacks in the region. Iranian-backed proxies have already carried out dozens of attacks on U.S. forces since October, including one that killed 3 service members. The U.S. responded with strikes to Iranian-backed targets. Those strikes have reportedly caused Iran to scale back their attacks in the region.
They recognize that they're outmatched by the United States and by Israel, and so that they're very hesitant to get into a direct conflict, but they will push the envelope because they presume that our willingness to push back is less than theirs.
Republicans are critical of how the Biden administration has dealt with Iran, including unfreezing cash assets in return for hostages and the potential return to a nuclear deal.
As Iran marches across the Middle East, the Biden administration has still not articulated a coherent Iran policy outside of the nuclear negotiations. It's time to change course.
I find it unfortunate that we don't have a member of the administration here. I'd like to understand the logic for their current position, how it may have changed, what their views are for going forward. It's helpful to hear from experts such as yourselves, but you raise questions that really need to be responded to by the current administration.
On Capitol Hill, former special envoy to Iran, Brian Hook, told senators more crippling sanctions are needed to secure the region.
Money is the sinews of war. Iran understands that. If you don't go after the money, it's just not a serious strategy.
Hook has been the target of Iranian threats since his time in the Trump administration, and he continues to have government security. The Islamic holy month of Ramadan starts in less than 2 weeks, and its kickoff is viewed by some as an unofficial deadline for a potential hostage exchange and ceasefire. Matt Gelka, CBN News.
Thanks, Matt. Coming up, a big day for the presidential race here in the U.S. as both parties will hold primaries in multiple states for voters to pick their nominees. As new polls bring more bad numbers for President Biden, we'll bring you the story when we come back.
Get your daily quick start from CBN News. A quick read on the important news of the day delivered right to your inbox. Stay current on breaking news, politics, and entertainment. Go to quickstart.news and subscribe today.
Here in the U.S., tomorrow is Super Tuesday, the biggest day so far on the election calendar. Republicans and Democrats in 15 states will hold primary contests to decide their nominees for president. As Dale Hurd reports, there's little question about who will win.
As the nation prepares for Super Tuesday, President Biden and former President Trump are leading everywhere that delegates are up for grabs. Donald Trump has a wide lead over Nikki Haley, and Joe Biden has all but 2 of Democratic delegates so far. CBN News reporter Tara Mergener was at the Trump rally in Richmond, Virginia over the weekend.
Ahead of Super Tuesday, Donald Trump is dominating the GOP primary in Virginia. Here in Richmond, supporters started lining up the day before to get a spot inside the rally.
Those Trump supporters voiced many of the same concerns.
I love his America First stance.
I want the borders closed.
The economy.
The illegal border crossing.
Former South Carolina Governor Nikki Haley did win the District of Columbia's GOP primary on Sunday in her first victory over Donald Trump in the 2024 cycle.
This is the time for us to make our choice. This is the time for us to be loud and let everybody know that America is better than what we see right now.
Since D.C. is one of the most heavily Democratic jurisdictions in the country with only about 23,000 registered Republicans, Donald Trump sarcastically congratulated Haley for being elected Queen of the Swamp.
She was going around every show, Donald Trump this and that. That wasn't working too well.
Trump is likely to pick up several hundred more delegates tomorrow. On NBC's Meet the Press, Haley refused to pledge to endorse him if he's the GOP nominee.
So you're no longer bound by that pledge?
No, I think I'll make what decision I want to make.
More bad news for Joe Biden as he prepares to deliver the State of the Union Thursday. A new AP poll shows 6 in 10 Americans doubt his mental fitness. He trails both Trump and Haley in a New York Times poll, and 2/3 of voters think the country is headed in the wrong direction. First Lady Dr. Jill Biden was stumping for her husband in Las Vegas.
We are immovable and unstoppable.
Biden's bad polling numbers come after the Michigan primary, in which more than 100,000 Democratic primary voters chose uncommitted. What's seen as a protest vote by Arab American voters over his support for the war in Gaza could come back to haunt the president in November. And former President Trump could learn today whether the Supreme Court will let him appear on this year's ballot, with the justices expected to decide a case out of Colorado. Dale Hurd, CBN News.
Thanks, Dale. Still ahead, a doctor under federal investigation because he called out his hospital for lying about transgender surgeries for minors. We'll hear from the whistleblower himself right after this. A Texas Surgeon General faces a federal investigation after exposing transgender procedures being done on children. Medical reporter Lori Johnson brings us a look at the case as the controversy over this issue continues to surge.
General Surgeon Eitan Haim is speaking out against people who perform transgender procedures on minors.
These doctors believe they can become gods and create something new. It's not a doctor's job to harm people, even if the person wants it.
Harm, he says, that's often permanent.
They have to give up something that they have no concept of understanding, which is the potential loss of having a family in the future.
Texas Children's Hospital, where Dr. Haim worked, announced they were stopping their transgender procedures, prompting the resignation of Dr. Catherine Gordon, a staunch proponent. However, Haim said he discovered the procedures were still taking place.
There were a few residents who I knew who said that they had just finished implanting a puberty-blocking device in 11, 12, 13-year-old kid who believed they were transgender, who had all these psychiatric issues which were being unaddressed.
Haim gave documents, possibly redacted patient records, to reporter Chris Rufo to prove the treatments were still going on.
The largest children's hospital in the world was lying about a program that was manipulating, mutilating, and sterilizing young, confused adolescent children.
Within weeks, Haim was told he was the subject of a federal investigation, reportedly for violating patient privacy, which he denies.
I am being targeted because I was a whistleblower.
We have no indication of what he's being investigated for at this point. Our understanding is that the DOJ would be interested in charging him on a technicality if they could.
Dr. Haim's attorney calls it a scare tactic.
The Department of Justice, the FBI, Health and Human Services Division. There are numerous agencies within the Department of Justice that are abusing their power to coerce whistleblowers to keep their mouths shut.
The Justice Department told CBN News they cannot comment on the existence or lack thereof of any potential investigation. Dr. Haim isn't the only healthcare provider opposed to these transgender procedures. That's why the Religious Freedom Institute helped launch the Medical Conscience Rights Initiative, stating providers should have the right to refuse to perform them.
Past few years, we've seen laws passed in Arkansas, Ohio, South Carolina, Montana, and Florida. We're working right now in 6 other states.
However, many healthcare workers may do them anyway.
When you're in that situation, there's pressure because, especially at academic medical centers, if you decide to speak out against something like this, you can almost guarantee there's going to be severe career ramifications.
Pushing back on transgender ideology is taking center stage here in Washington, D.C. This is where thousands of people are gathered for the big conservative political action conference.
I have children, and how that it's brought up constantly and perpetuated in the school system, I don't agree with it at all.
I think it should be outlawed for kids. I think kids shouldn't be able to consent to puberty blockers, gender reassignment surgery.
Dr. Haim sat on the Genesis 127 panel, which focused on the biblical view of gender.
What is happening to these kids is not medicine.
There's nothing wrong with these kids' bodies. There's nothing wrong with these adults' bodies either. I mean, adults are getting harmed by this as well, and that's important to recognize. But there is no such thing as a transgender child. There are boys and there are girls.
And while so many oppose physically altering the bodies of youngsters, they do support helping kids emotionally.
Many young people are in chaos, they're lacking understanding, and they're lacking compassion. And that's where we have to start. And I think we have to start with loving them, listening to them, caring for them.
Telling these kids that they're perfect the way they are, that they're going through a hard time, and that the lessons they learn during those moments are what they can take to adulthood, and they can find happiness in how they were created.
Lori Johnson, CBN News.
Amen. Thank you, Lori. Well, coming up, the Chosen miniseries about the life and ministry of Jesus has proven to be wildly successful, but you may be surprised to learn just who's watching this show. We'll have that story for you when we return. The Chosen, the popular series about the life of Jesus, is reaching beyond Christian viewers. A new survey reveals about 1/3 of those who regularly watch are not Christians. That's according to the Chosen VP, Catherine Warnock. She told Christian Headlines that about 30% of viewers are simply curious about Christianity, including some who have no Christian faith at all. Warnock also says they're pleasantly surprised that more younger viewers are watching the show than they expected. That's amazing. Well, that is going to do it for this edition of CBN News Watch. Remember, you can find more of our stories and our news programs on the CBN News channel anytime or online with cbnnews.com. Also, tell us what you think about the stories you've seen today. Just email us at newswatch@cbn.com or reach out on Facebook, Twitter, or Instagram. We hope you'll join us next time. Until next time, have a great day and God bless you.
Download the CBN News app, 24/7 news from a Christian perspective at home or on the road. One place for all of your news. Breaking news alerts. Set daily prayer goals and pray for news stories. Read the most important news and watch CBN News Channel live. CBN News, because truth matters. Go to cbnnewsapp.com to get the app today.